Welcome to the Warp. I'm Jack Reda. I'm the designer of Cosmic Odyssey, which is the 7th expansion for Cosmic Encounter, published by Fantasy Flight Games. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at new aliens that are part of that expansion. Now, there are 42 aliens overall, but 12 of them are alternate timeline aliens. These are aliens that had been previously published by Fantasy Flight, but I made some changes or completely reinvented 12 of them, and I cover that in a separate video. What I'm going to focus on here are the yellow alert aliens among the 30 new aliens that are in this expansion. So I'll talk about what these aliens do. I'll talk about whether or not some of them had been previously published in an earlier edition of Cosmic Encounter, and any changes that had been made, and any other fun facts that I can think about. So let's dive in. Our first yellow alert alien is the alien Cosmos. Now, this alien is an essence alien, and essence aliens are aliens that were introduced in the previous expansion, Cosmic Eons, and they are aliens that have their own little set of mini cards, each with unique effects on them, and they are leveraged in different ways. So let's take a look at what Cosmos does. If you are not the offense, after the offense wins the encounter, you may use this power. Look through your essence cache. Here, you're always going to have 3 cards that you can look at and leverage. You'll use one and then replenish. And then you're going to play that rule face up next to this sheet. Or instead of playing a new rule, you can actually then discard one that you had played previously. Now, the abilities on the rules are available to all players, and when any other player uses a rule, Cosmos gets 1 reward. So these rules are interesting because there's one for basically each phase of the game, and it's something that is generally pretty desirable, something that you normally can't do in Cosmic Encounter, but might like to. So here's one for resolution. As a main player, after you win the encounter, you may gain 1 reward. This occurs after compensation is collected. Here's one for the start of turn. At the start of turn, you may draw a card from the deck or discard a card from your hand before determining if you must draw a new hand. So normally, you don't get to do that. Regroup. During your regroup, you may redistribute any number of your ships among your colonies, however you like. Destiny. When you draw your own color for destiny, you may treat it as a wild destiny. Launch. After the hyperspace gate is aimed at one of your home planets, you may re-aim the gate at any other planet in your system where the offense does not already have a foreign colony. Alliance. After alliances are formed, if you are not a main player or ally, you may ally with either main player by sending more ships into the encounter without exceeding the limit than that player has in the encounter. So these are the types of things that normally you don't get to do, but in many cases, you might want to do those. And all that you're going to have to do is allow Cosmos to get a reward. So it's pretty handy. It is similar to Anarchist, which showed up in the previous expansion. But Anarchist, their cards are a little more insane. So it's definitely not as controlled an effect as it is with Cosmos. And Cosmos has more control over which ones they're going to go into play and how long they're going to be around. So they could get rid of those if they want. So for me, it's a fun alien. I like adding these new rules, and there's going to be situations where you're like, oh, I don't really want Cosmos to get another reward, but I kind of want to be able to do this. And of course, Cosmos can do it as well. He doesn't get a reward for doing it, but he's able to now do more things in the game because of these rules. And you can be very strategic about the order in which you release them. You can say like, all right, this is something I know I can take advantage of, and then when it's no longer useful for me, I could get rid of that the next time the offense wins an encounter so that other people aren't taking advantage of it as well. So that's how Cosmos works. Our next alien is Dragon. Now, there used to be an alien called Dragon in previous editions of Cosmic Encounter, and it was a lucre alien. And again, lucre was an economic variant that was added to Cosmic Encounter with mixed results. And the way that Dragon worked was you just started with more lucre, and people paid you the lucre for certain effects. And so it was great to be Dragon to have lucre. We didn't include any aliens like that in this expansion. We did have a thing that's basically lucre reimagined. It's called Lux, but it didn't really lend itself to having an alien that exclusively could use Lux, because then you have to have Lux in the game. And we really didn't want to have any alien that couldn't be played without the variant included. So we decided to go in a new direction, and actually The other guys in Future Pastimes, Peter, Greg, and Bill, had recently been working on Iron Throne when we were doing our play testing for Odyssey in the early days. And Iron Throne was their Game of Thrones themed game that has some similar mechanisms to Cosmic Encounter. And so they'd been watching a lot of the show and dragons scorching things. So they really wanted to have a dragon that scorched stuff. So the way this one works is you have the power to scorch. After Destiny is drawn, if it matches a player color or is wild, add that card to this sheet. After the third card of the same color is placed on this sheet, use this power to discard all 3 cards and then scorch a planet in that player's home system. All ships on that planet are sent to the warp and the planet is removed from the game. After a Destiny card is placed on the sheet, you may treat it, each wild as any color. So once you've got a wild on there, then somebody's planet's getting torched pretty soon. And as the offense, instead of drawing Destiny, you may choose to discard a Destiny card from this sheet to have an encounter as though you had drawn that card. So if there is a player that you actually really do want to encounter, or maybe there's just a system that you don't want to scorch a planet there, you can use those cards that are on your sheet to have an encounter there instead. And then if the Destiny deck needs to be reshuffled, you're going to remove all the cards and add them to the Destiny deck when you replenish it. So the thing with Dragon is that you really are going to be able to get invited a lot to the offense, because they're going to want to have you on a planet where they have a foreign colony, so that when it does come time to scorch a planet in that system, they're not going to lose that colony, because then you'd be scorching one of your own foreign colonies as Dragon. So that's the key. And of course, if you aren't Dragon, you do want to try to make deals with Dragon as much as possible so that you are sharing colonies with Dragon. And those colonies are preferably protected from being scorched. And yes, Dragon would have to scorch a planet in his own system. So as Dragon, you're going to want to make sure that you've got a planet where maybe you've got some of your ships, not as many of your ships are there. That's up to you. Of course, they're only going to the warp, but that planet is removed from the game. All right, our next alien is Extractor. And Extractor is a brand new alien to Cosmic Encounter. As the offense or an offensive ally, if your side wins the encounter before landing on the planet, you may use this power. If you do, move all ships belonging to another player, even one of the bystanders who wasn't even involved in the encounter, from that targeted planet and you move them to any other planet before the ships would be lost or captured. So even if you're attacking and it's just a defense there, you can extract their ships before they would go to the warp and place them somewhere else. If you move the ships to a planet where that player gains a foreign colony, you gain 2 rewards for each ship you moved. And if you move the ships to a planet in that player's home system where they do not have a colony, you draw 2 cards at random from their hand instead. So Extractor can have a pretty powerful impact on a game, because you can extract somebody's foreign colony and move them somewhere else. Now, if you move them to somewhere where they already have a colony, you're not going to gain anything from it as Extractor, but you have affected their score, so that can be a very big deal. And as such, just like with Dragon, you want to have Extractor sharing foreign colonies with you as much as possible, so that there's no reason for Extractor to necessarily want to attack that planet again. Of course, they still could ally with the offense on a planet where they have a colony just so they can extract somebody. But you can also just move people around. You say, all right, you're going to lose this foreign colony, but I'm going to put you over there instead. And sometimes there's tactical reasons to put somebody on a different foreign colony, but most of the time it's just so that you can gain those rewards. Or if you move them to where they have a home planet, you can get some cards from them. And that's an interesting effect as well, depending on who's got good cards in their hand, then you want to be able to affect that. So that's how Extractor works. Next we have Force. Now Force is an alien that had been previously published. It was originally an Eon alien that had the ability to be with people, and it was fairly ambiguous about what you could do. You could help people in a few different ways, but again, it was one of those aliens that a lot of people, if they weren't really super hardcore Cosmic Encounter players, they often didn't really know what they should do with the power as the Force. Mayfair tried to jazz it up a little bit, making it a Lucre alien, but it still didn't work very well. So when we sat down and looked at Force, because they wanted to add something at least called the Force into Cosmic Encounter, we decided that we could go with a new effect. And there was actually a Mayfair alien called Busybody that had a pretty good effect, and we more or less just used that effect for the new Force. So here's how it works. If you are not a main player or ally, after encounter cards are selected but before they're revealed, you may use this power to choose a main player. You look at that player's selected encounter card, and you may swap that card with one from your hand. And that player can look at the swapped card if they want. If you swap cards and that player wins the encounter or makes a deal, you gain 3 rewards. If that player loses the encounter or fails to make a deal, you have to send 2 of your ships from your colonies to the warp, and that player gains 1 reward. So it's very similar to the original Busybody, but I tweaked it to make it a little bit more. You're getting more out of it as the Force, and the person, if you are purposely screwing somebody over, which you certainly can do as the Force, they're at least getting a little something, get 1 reward out of that. So Busybody was always a good alien. But we figured, you know what, this is a good way to make how Force helps a player much clearer and easier to implement. And there's clear incentives to do or to meddle, even if you're not helping them. So I'm pretty pleased with how that turned out. Our next alien is Gremlin, which is also a new alien. So sort of like how I was talking about, we didn't want to create an effect for Dragon that relied on Lux. We do have an alien here, Gremlin, that uses the Hazard deck. And the Hazard deck is a variant, but the difference here is that you can use Gremlin even if the Hazard deck is not otherwise part of the game. If it is, it doesn't change anything. You can still use Gremlin, but it allows you to not force all the players to have hazards as part of the game. It's just a special effect. It's almost like its own essence card. So Gremlin has the power to meddle. At the start of each player's turn, draw a hazard card from the Hazard deck, even if it's not being used, and place it face down on this sheet. At the end of the Destiny phase, if no hazard warnings were drawn during this encounter, you may use this power to play a hazard from this sheet. And before the hazard discard pile is shuffled, you form it, you just discard everything on there, which rarely happens. But so what's interesting about this is that the hazards are like events, and when you've got an assortment of them as Gremlin, you can influence how an encounter will turn out, and you can give yourselves more advantages or give a player who's winning some disadvantages that they're going to have to overcome, and help to level the playing field or at least skew things towards Gremlin. The hazard warnings on the Destiny cards, those are always there. They've been there from the beginning. And actually, Cosmic Odyssey includes new versions of those cards that make that hazard warning much easier to see because they were pretty subtle in the original base set. So I like anything that takes advantage of the existing components or elements of the game. Cosmic Odyssey comes with its own Hazard deck, so even if you don't have the expansion that originally introduced it, which is Cosmic Conflict, you've got hazards that you can use so that you can play them with Gremlin. And you can of course, combine those hazard decks into one big deck and have even more fun with that. So I enjoy hazards a little bit. I love how Gremlin is able to take advantage of them and use them in the game. And it makes things unpredictable in a fun way. Our next yellow alert alien is Insect, which is actually supposed to be a red alert alien. And the flare card that is included in Cosmic Odyssey is red alert. So know that the alien was supposed to be red, but it's kind of yellow. I don't know, we're going to call it orange. Insect was an alien that was originally part of the Cosmic Encounters first edition Eon, as well as in Mayfair. And the original version of Insect copied what the opponent's alien did, which is a neat idea and works for about half of the aliens pretty well. There's already an alien that kind of does that called Plant, which is very problematic in how it's implemented in a lot of different ways. So because of all those weird conflicts and edge cases, and a lot of times you're copying an alien that doesn't do anything as a main player, and so it's not really that useful. We wanted to take Insect in a new direction. So this is a reimagined Insect. After a player plays and resolves a flare, you may use this power to either discard a flare from your hand of an alien not in the game, or if you have no such flares in your hand, draw and discard a flare from the separate flare deck. If that flare's alien does not have game setup text and is allowed in the game, gain their sheet under your control as your new flesh. You use the power of your new flesh in addition to your own power. And before you would gain newer flesh, remove your older flesh from the game. So this is an alien that it does get to use aliens, but it's not tied to what the opponent has. And it's tied to the flares in the game, and it allows you to cycle in new flares and use those powers. So I always enjoy a meta alien because aliens, I think, are the thing in Cosmic Encounter that's the most fun. So I like to have other aliens pop up in a game because it just makes that game far more memorable, I think. So with Insect, you have some control over that in terms of if you've got multiple flares, or you can discard one to get a different one. So it's fun. If you like a meta alien, then Insect is a great alien for you to play. Our next alien is all new. It's called Lemming. It probably could have been a green alert because it's such a simple concept, but the reason that it's yellow is because it does involve sacrificing your ships, and you need to understand when you have so many ships in the warp that you're actually in a little bit of trouble. So here's how it works. Power to migrate. After the defense is determined, if you have 9 or more ships in the warp, use this power to move 4 of your ships out of the warp onto any planet in the defensive system where you do not have a foreign colony. So Lemming is rewarded for having a ton of ships in the warp, and once they hit that threshold of 9, they're hoping that somebody turns up a destiny color that lets them move 4 of those ships out of the warp and then establish a colony. And when that happens, then you want to try to lose 4 ships if you can. It lets you ally with either side with fairly reckless abandon, especially if you're allying with the offense, because if you win as the offense, well, then you're going to get the colony anyway. And if you lose, then it's just a little bit of a delay, but you're eventually going to get those ships out of the warp, and you're going to form a colony with them. And once you've got those 4 ships on a foreign colony, then you can use those ships. You don't have to leave all 4 of them there. You can use those to add to other encounters or as the offense yourself. So Lemming, very straightforward. I like how it lets somebody play the game without worrying so much about their ship resources. Although, again, you do have to worry a little bit, because if you've got a lot of ships in there, you run the risk of losing your power or other bad things happening. Our next alien is Lloyd. Lloyd is an alien that's been around for a while, and it's always been a lucre alien because it has the power to insure, and it involved people paying you lucre in order to insure their assets. And we've modified it so that it doesn't require lucre or lux, but it still works pretty much the way it always has. At any time, you may use this power to offer to insure any or all of the following assets of another player until the end of the encounter: alien powers before they're used, ships before they're lost or captured, and specifically named cards before they are played, discarded, or taken. Insured cards must be named explicitly, for example, a Attack 30 or a Cosmic Zap. If your offer is accepted, place a Cosmic token on this sheet. Insured alien powers cannot be lost or canceled. Insured ships return to colonies instead of being lost or captured. Insured cards cannot be forcibly discarded, taken, or collected as compensation. An insured card cannot be played more than once in the encounter. So you could say, I want to insure this Cosmic Zap. You can play it, and then instead of discarding it, or an alien like Inferno taking it, you just get it back. Now, at any time, you may spend a token to gain a reward. So Lloyd can insure assets for multiple players throughout the encounter. So it's one of those rare aliens that is firing more than once per encounter. And so, yes, Lloyd, if they hustle adequately, they could rack up quite a few Cosmic tokens, which gives them a lot of rewards. This is potentially one of the most powerful aliens in the game. Now, technically, everybody can ignore Lloyd and just say, no, I'm not going to do it. But the temptation, I think, is too strong. A lot of times players are going to say, yeah, I don't want my alien to be zapped, so I'm going to insure it. Or I've got the attack 40, I might as well insure it so that I can use it again. Or I've got a particularly good card that I want to keep using over and over. So they do. They eventually they say, yeah, it's just one reward, I'll do it. But then somebody else does it as well, and then you do it in the next encounter. So Lloyd, very powerful, fun alien. Next we have Silencer. Now Silencer is an old alien that has been around for a while. It's one of those aliens that can be pretty annoying and obtrusive, and you can use it in the old versions. You could use it to pick on one player in particular just over and over again. So this Silencer has been tempered a little bit. So here's how it works. As a main player, after Destiny is drawn, you may use this power to place one silence token with its total silence face up on the sheet of any player who does not have a silence token. So right away, you can't pick on somebody you've already picked on until much later. When a player with a silence token speaks, invites allies, accepts alliances, or uses optional powers, they are penalized for being too noisy. Penalize them either by sending any one of their ships not in the encounter to the warp, or by forcing them to discard a card at random from their hand. If a player has a total silence token at the end of the encounter, flip it to its partial silence side. And if a player has a partial silence token, after they are penalized, they return that token to your supply. So the silence tokens make for a very strange game where people who have them are very quiet. They're not inviting allies, or they're waiting until I need to do this, so I'm going to let myself get penalized. But the penalties can be harsh, especially if you've got a handful of really good cards and don't want to lose one of them at random, or if you've got a foreign colony with only one ship, then you're in trouble. So you really have to be quiet, or else Cosmic Zap Silencer for that encounter. So yeah, it can still be a bit of a bear. So yeah, use with caution. Understand it's going to make for a very strange game, but I like that. I like effects that are take over the game in some unusual way. And then we're at our last one. This is Witch. Witch is a previously published alien, but has been slightly reimagined in the new context of how Fantasy Flight does things. So Witch is now an essence alien. The original Witch could come up with some curses that they could give another player when they lost an encounter. But like the other ambiguous aliens, it tended to be sort of thing that could either be too easily abused or not really leveraged fully, or confusing for newer players. So using the essence cards, I think, makes Witch much more manageable and functional and fun. So the way it works is as a main player or ally, after you lose an encounter, you use this power to curse one or more opposing players. For each player, choose a curse from your essence card cache and place it face up in front of them. You cannot curse a player who already has a curse. During each regroup, each cursed player may place one of their ships from their colonies onto the curse card. So that is one of the ways that these essence cards are a little bit different. They've got numbers on them, whereas if we look at the ones for Cosmos, it's just a description of the effect. So each curse has a condition that a player is going to suffer for as long as they have the curse in front of them. But as they are adding ships to this card during each regroup, they are moving towards getting rid of the curse. So after a curse card has a number of ships on it equal to the number on the card, all of those ships are sent to the warp, and the curse is placed in your unavailable pile. So it's to add insult to injury, they lose those ships after they finally get rid of the curse. So here's an example of some curses. Here's an alliance curse. You cannot become an ally or invite allies. So that's a big deal. You're going it alone for at least 3 encounters. You don't have to put a ship on there every time. But if you do, you're going to get rid of that curse more quickly. Artifact curse. Discard all artifacts in your hand. If you gain an artifact, you must discard it immediately. Ugh, and there's one for flares as well. Attack curse. As a main player, before encounter cards are selected, you must reveal the attack card in your hand that has the highest value to all players. So that's nobody's idea of a good time, and that was one of the 4s. Win curse. You cannot win the game. So, when are you going to get rid of that one? And then totals curse. As a main player, Ships on your side subtract from your encounter total instead of adding. So most of the time, that is also not going to be a good time. So that is which I really enjoy the artwork for that. I like the little Easter egg for Loser, who's being tortured with the voodoo doll. Yeah, this is fantastic. All the artwork in Cosmic Odyssey is really great. I really like the silencer art as well. I love the little scorpion action there. So yeah, that is the that's the Yellow Alert alien. So a couple more Essence aliens, which I really liked that idea. So it was fun to get them in there. I like how Witch uses curses and is leveraging the Essence effect in a different way. And yeah, it's a nice mix of old and new. And among the old ones, it's a mix of, this is kind of like the old effect, but hopefully improved. And this one had to be changed, but hopefully everyone will think it was an improvement on there. So let me know what you think of these Yellow Alert aliens from Cosmic Odyssey and the aliens overall. And let me know what you think of Cosmic Odyssey. I'm super happy with how it turned out. It's a ridiculously large expansion. It's like 3 rolled into 1. And I'm just thrilled with how it turned out. So let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next video.